the email. I don't know if you saw, if you could see who else was on that email, but they're about, well, the preachers were included, and then the folks who had signed up for the Inspiring Communities portion of the Innovate Catawba plan. So, yeah, I'm just, I had a few RSVPs today for people, but we just need a better crowd, and so I have to figure out another way to get the word out. The format for today really was my task. What I was asked to do was to present in greater detail and keep this group updated on Inspiring Spaces. And that is just a piece of the Inspiring Communities portion of that Innovate Catawba plan, and that group needs to get sort of energized and identified with a particular set of tasks. And they might not include just this project; they might include a number of things across the county. And so we have some work to do there. So we need to figure out who those players are and make that happen. But my name is Andrea Surratt. I'm one of the assistant managers, and we have Chuck Hanson, our public services director, Matt McLeod, our parks and rec director, and Brian Frazier, our planning and development services director. So we're just going to go through with you today in detail the plan as it stands today for Inspiring Spaces in a page. And so there's a handout if you need, and a place to sign in. If you could. Thank you. So with this project, then we're going to go through the pamphlet that you have, all the color documents that you have, and because we have some extras, take a few more with you. It's a pain to print that off the internet, so feel free to use these. We're going to go through, this is the entire draft document as it stands today. And so a couple of things about the plan. First of all, you can get to this entire planning process through our website, through hickory.nc.gov. Just go to the quick link section, go to the section on Inspiring Spaces, and then this is the community open house information. And so what we wanted to share with you, and so some of you came to the community open house and some of you may not have. And so just as a reminder, we keep zeroing in on our recession information from the COG. It's the job numbers from the change between 2000 and 2012, where Hickory really was the only major MSA to lose 30,000 jobs, and you can see the drastic difference in our MSA versus maybe some of the moderate growth or even just slight moderate loss of jobs from the other MSAs. So we are going or have gone in the wrong direction, and we just have been hit by this recession that's included some targeted industries, and so with that, then it's changed our economy. And so we really feel like this plan is about jobs and population growth. And so part of that includes how do you change up, how do you improve your community, what you see as you travel through Hickory, in an effort to spur companies to pay attention to the surroundings of this community and come and locate, and then also really just try to encourage young people to locate here based upon the jobs that might come and based also on just the amenities that young people are looking for. And so this plan also focuses on economic development, because really part of this is it's not just about dressing things up, it's about trying to change how people view Hickory in terms of vibrancy. And so every so often cities need to reinvent themselves on the streetscape. They need to look at their parks, they need to look at outdoor recreation, they need to look at how visitors and citizens and companies see that community from the major entry points in. And so a lot of what's being recommended is in effort to encourage redevelopment in certain areas and then encourage vibrancy along those entry points. So there are things that are happening in tandem with this project. One is the business park improvements, and so that's something that we have ongoing. all the time. We've got Fairgrove Business Park, and we have a business park that's being developed out by MDI that will have pad sites available. So that work is being done. We don't expect this Inspiring Spaces plan to substitute for that. We are constantly looking for sites for industry in Hickory, and whether those are always in the city limits, they may or may not be. So when they aren't, and when those properties aren't available, then we partner with our other towns and the county to make sure that we have sites for industry. So you'll hear that multi-jurisdictional business park definition as something that then is a way to allow industry to happen in our area and jobs to happen in our area, maybe not within our city limits if there's not the best space. We also are very focused on demolition of vacant buildings. We want to partner with any property owner that has one that's ready to take it down if it's not available for, come on in, you'll sign in. Thank you. And so really we want the vacant buildings not only to come down, but if those are in areas where redevelopment can occur, we want to make sure that those sites get marketed. So we want to put that information on our vacant building inventory list, as well as just the sites that are vacant then. Another piece of the puzzle that we hear a lot from the Economic Development Corporation is spec buildings. And so we can no longer just say, well, we have some raw land available for your company, but no, it's not been graded or even cleared, or no, there's no roads and water and sewer to that site. We have to have sites that are ready for spec buildings potentially to go up, and also for pad ready sites that a company can come in and build that building that they want specifically. So all of those things are part of our economic development focus, in addition to the recommendations from this plan. Hang on. Goes to sleep. So we're having to compete with cities across the southeast. We're having to compete with cities across the U.S. because after the recession, there are just a number of cities going through this transformation. And so we can't afford to stand around and say we have everything available that we need to provide. We need to find new ways to attract young people. We need to find ways to give them office space, grants for upfit, things like that. We need to give them greenways and outdoor activities for them to enjoy. Spruced up roadways and gateways just always help. It shows that your community is invested in itself, and that it realizes that things don't stay the same, that it's not a static community, that things always need to be continually improved. And just that curb appeal. When you travel to other cities through the Research Triangle area, obviously Asheville and Charlotte, and the areas around Charlotte, even down into Wilmington and points east, then you find a lot of curb appeal that they have taken and made investments in those spaces. So the plan is really now in its final stages, and this is a map that's fairly broad, and what the green lines just indicate where projects are connected. And so when we talk about why we pick certain places for improvements, part of the logic was that, well, we want to improve how places are connected within Hickory. So you can get to 2 or 3 destinations without always getting in your car, or maybe you have options for getting on the lake without constantly having to drive to one put-in point. So just a number of ways that all of these projects are interconnected is what this map represents. And then if you turn the page, and the print's fairly small, but you just have to focus in or get a magnifying glass or reading glasses. But basically, and that's why I wanted you to have one of these to take with you, every single project recommendation is on here. And we wanted the community to know that these projects range from all parts of the city and how those projects are also connected. So there was a great amount of thought put into making sure that students at CVCC could have access to maybe a greenway to get you back from the campus over to Tate Boulevard and down Tate to the downtown or up to LR or to the Salt Block. So that's just an example. But there are a number of networks that are illustrated on this map, and those are all the ways that this plan shows connectivity. So you remember the 5 categories. I won't go through those again. And so we just want to take you through the projects themselves. And so specifically about gateways, what we're learning is that the NCDOT is interested in gateways, and nationally the DOT or nationally the roads are being considered places for art, places for landscaping, and just a way to express a local community's features. And so there are projects across the country where bridges have been given a special attention to detail or special treatment, and that you can do that for a couple of reasons. And one, it's a bit of notoriety, a bit of sort of, oh, I remember, it's like passing the Georgia, or it's like passing that peach in Spartanburg or Gaffney or wherever that is. I believe it's Gaffney. So you pass that peach, you realize it's a water tower, but so somebody remembers that. Well, there are other ways to do it that are a lot more functional, and so one of those that seems to stand out is just to improve how your interstates look along the travelway. So if you've been driving in and out of Hickory, there's not much that tells you you've arrived. We do thankfully have now lights that the DOT provided, so at least our interstate intersections are lit. But then in the landscaping is beautiful, no doubt. But then what would be something that stands out? Well, you just have a few green signs that say exits this, that, and the other, and you have maybe a mark or two about Hickory, but you really don't have anything that describes Hickory in a way that speaks to its character, and that's the type of thing that some of the work on gateways can do. So there's a list of projects there. We consider the gateways to be in about 4 or 5 categories, depending upon which categories you're interested to look at. I-40 has at least 3 gateways, and then 321 has a number of those, at least 2. And then there are several other ways that you get into Hickory from Alexander County, out from Fairgrove, even out from Springs Road. So and the pictures in the plan are illustrative of the types of designs that have been done across the country to make a statement to help you remember that that was a special place and that they've made that investment that's not just run-of-the-mill. So if you turn to the primary interstate entry feature, let's go here. The Lenore-Rhine Boulevard and I-40 entry feature, and I'll go back to the other one. That plan is one that really could have an interesting bridge treatment at the bridge at exit 125. And I guess if folks have traveled west, there's an example from Knoxville that has a pretty special bridge treatment. So the NCDOT is open to working with us on projects like that. Going back to the pedestrian bridge over 321, so that's another thing. And if you've been in the Raleigh area, they have a pedestrian bridge. There are a number of places that connect their pedestrian walkways and greenways over a bridge. But this project may or may not be one that goes on the map. And the reason is because the DOT is trying to still decide how the plans for rebuilding the bridge at 321 coming in from Caldwell County, how that will look, if it will go over the railroad, which is an at-grade crossing, or whether it'll be at grade. So that one may or may not make the final list. talked about some other things that can be done along the right-of-way that make it so that it's not just the same as every other place. That's really the point of the drawings there. And likewise, just having some similar to repeating theme at some of the smaller entry points into Hickory also is important. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Brian. He'll talk about greenways because they're just as important of a travel way, just not on a road.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. I'm Brian Frazier, Director of Planning and Development Services for the City of Hickory, and I'll start off by talking about greenways, bikeways, and blueways, and I won't read everything verbatim. I just had an eye appointment a few days ago, and I need new glasses, so I'll try to keep up with me here. Basically, the Hickory Heritage Trail, a lot of this had been previously planned even before I got here. A lot of this, I think, was done back by Mack and Associates back in '95, but includes Fallen Creek Greenway, the Cripple Creek Greenway, the Horsford Creek Greenway, and Kiwanis Park and Downtown Urban Greenway. And again, these were all planned previously in the Sidewalk, Bikeway, Greenway, and Trail master plans. The city has over 20 master plans in all, and some of these master plans are updated and look to eventually be funded, at least in part, through this planning project. Another trail we're looking at is the Lenore-Rhine University to Stanford Park Greenway. This would be one of the shortest trails, but one of the most doable. Also, there's the Henry Fork River Greenway, again, and that was in the previous master plans as well. Lake Hickory Greenways, basically 5 trails in one, and then there's the First Street Southwest Urban Greenway. That was also previously discussed and planned in a master plan. And then, as Andrea mentioned, there's the idea of the CVCC to LRU Urban Greenway. I'll get that symbol again here, Bill.
Need to remind me in an hour or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, the next slide that you can see, this is the Hickory Heritage Trail, the rail trail master plan and development, and this is basically connections for pedestrian and bicycle usage. And this would be a trail along the Norfolk Southern Spur line in northwest Hickory that would provide an opportunity to connect a lot of the other trails, including the Union Square area, to Lake Hickory by an extensive trail network. It's pretty exciting. I've walked this with staff before, and you can see on the bottom right. On the bottom right, you can see the picture there of the Piedmont Wagon Building. That was one of our brownfield sites a few years back, where we did a Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessment, and basically the site came up clean. So it's fairly marketable. It's been all cleaned out of all the millions of spindles and 70s and 80s athletic socks, and the building is structurally sound. Parking's a little tight, but it would be a great adaptive reuse opportunity as part of that trailhead heading up toward the lake. And what we would envision, I mean, not over the next couple of years, but over the next several or decade, is to see various other buildings having adaptive reuse utilization along that trail spur, heading in a basically northerly, westerly direction to the lake, with antique shops and tourist opportunities, maybe places to rent bikes. There's been sort of a debate back and forth, a discussion of, okay, if you have a rail to trail, then that means you don't have the rail anymore. I'm not sure how feasible that is, because that line is still used for companies like Shuford Mills. They rely on that quite a bit for their inventory and processing. So, I mean, this building could make a great kind of headquarters or museum or tourism information area. Talk about the history of Piedmont Wagon, talk about the textile industry. So there's a lot of opportunities in that area, and it could rightfully coexist with trains running, because they only operate, I believe, 2 trains a week, Tuesday and Fridays or something like that. So this is a real good opportunity. I've been a planner since 1987, and way back when in upstate New York, we started over a 22-mile rail to trail, and now that has finally culminated after those couple decades. And the trailhead now, where it used to end at the Hudson River, now goes all the way across the old Poughkeepsie Railroad Bridge that was built in the 1880s. That was the longest and tallest bridge in the United States at that time, and it crosses the Hudson River over 200 foot tall, and it's over a mile long. It's just unbelievable for bike and pedestrians, and it's exceeded all tourist expectations the past 2.5 years. The next slide talks about the LRU to Stanford Park Greenway. Again, that's a bike-ped connection. And this is a multi-use trail, again, which we envision providing neighborhood area residents and the students at LRU the opportunity to connect to downtown and Union Square via foot or bike. And this would also go past between Lenore Ryan University and Union Square. Of course, it would connect to the Salt Block as well. So there's a lot of opportunities. LRU somewhat operates in a vacuum where there's not a direct connection. It's somewhat inaccessible, so we'd like to see a ped bike plan, a trail that properly connects the university to the Salt Block, to the city of Hickory proper, and Union Square and downtown. So we think this would be a tremendous asset, and it's not that long a distance, and it would be heavily utilized. The next slide is the Lake Hickory Greenways, the Greenway Master Plan and Development. And as you well know, I don't have to tell you, there's not a whole lot of direct public access to the waterfront in Hickory. A lot of missed opportunities that we're going to try to atone for. And this is a series of new and exciting trail systems along the lake waterfront, natural surface trails, multi-use asphalt trails, some of which already exist near J.C. Park. And these trails would all be part of a growing and expanding waterfront park, and there would be a lot more connectivity. And then, of course, the Blueway would be a great recreational experience along the river and the lakefront, accessing some of the coves and Horsford Creek in the lake. The next slide is the First Street Southwest Urban Greenway. This has also been talked about and planned in the past. This would be a multi-use trail, again, adjacent to First Street Southwest, going through the Ridgeview neighborhood, and it would connect US 70 and NC 127 to Government Avenue, downtown Hickory and Union Square. It would go by the Ridgeview Recreation Center and the Ridgeview Branch Library, which is well utilized, and the new project that the city's been working on with the community for a couple of years, the old historic Ridgeview Library that will be refurbished, and there's now a city parking lot to that. The next one is what's been discussed and proposed by the committee and our consultants and staff, is the CVCC to LRU Urban Greenway. This multi-use trail, again, would provide a bike and ped connection between LRU and CVCC. It would propose to go along 21st Street Drive Southeast, Sweetwater Road, connecting to Tate Boulevard and LR Boulevard. It would be a good link to the downtown linear park along the Norfolk Southern tracks and the Hickory Heritage Trail, connecting to Union Square and to the lake. So it would serve, again, coming down to that Union Square hub area. So I think these are all feasible, and I think it would be a great asset to the city. Mac's done a great job in his time here, his tenure here in Hickory, developing our park system. I think we've got some great parks. We could certainly use some new ones. We really need is the connectivity between the population centers, the commercial districts, as well as those parks, and have a complete connectivity trail system besides driving from one to the other and utilizing it. So I think that would be fantastic.
Good afternoon. As Andrew said, my name is Michael McLeod. I'm Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Hickory. And I just want to spend a few minutes talking with you about parks and what the proposed projects are in the Inspiring Spaces initiative. One of the unique things about Inspiring Spaces and it relates to the parks is it identifies improvements and upgrades to existing parks and existing public spaces, not acquisition of new property for parks, but that identifies existing public spaces for updates. One that we're going to take you through are up on the they're listed, and I'm not going to read those two before I switch to. I want to talk about that the ones that are not bolded. So if you see one that's not bolded in any of the plans, means there's not an accompanying description of that project. So I want to talk about the two that are not bolded up there. Is the Cloninger Mill Park and the Sandy Pines Park, and then we'll go to the other proposed project. Back in the city of Hickory, when we first did our first master plan, Parks and Recreation master plan, back in 1979, that plan identified the need for additional park and open space in the northeast quadrant of Hickory. It identified at that time the Cloninger Mill property for future park development. When the city did its master plan update again back in 1997, that need was still identified. More park and open space in the northeast quadrant, and it identified both Cloninger Mill Park and Sandy Pines Park. First talking about Cloninger Mill, if you're not familiar with what the proposed Cloninger Mill Park is, just to orientate you, it's at the intersection of 127 and Cloninger Mill Road. The property, the city the property and puts in right in the new northeast wastewater treatment plant. The property right across there is proposed park. Cloninger Mill Park is a proposed 63-acre park. The city, we did master planning for that park back in 2009. Some of the features of that park is picnic shelters, playgrounds, hiking, walking trails. It's got mountain bike course. It's got a disc golf course. It's got some outdoor educational features, outdoor classrooms, somewhat semi passive park. And as I said, we did do the master planning for that back in 2009. Another piece of property that's been identified is the Sandy Pines Park. Just to try and orient you where that is. Sandy Pines is currently a 13-acre undeveloped piece of property. It sits between the Sandy Pines subdivision sits between Sandy Ridge Road and 24th Street Northeast. The plans for that, we've currently not done any master planning for that piece of property, but it's basically designed as a neighborhood park. So those are two projects that have been on the drawing boards, really Cloninger Mill since 1979, but have been identified in the Inspiring Spaces initiative. The next, if you flip over, you see talking about the waterfront proposed waterfront park, and Brian, following up on what Brian was talking about earlier about Lake Hickory and access, and that's an asset that I think this plan takes advantage of. As you know, here in Catawba County, there's not much undeveloped property along the lake. A lot of it's developed. What the waterfront park does is take existing parks, and those being Winkler Park, LP Friends Stadium, Rotary Geithner Park, Hickory City Park, and JC Park, and basically connecting those parks into what's being called a waterfront park, if you see down existing, you can see down on the bottom there are all the those parks all identified there. But it's an opportunity to, and as Brian said, taking and connecting these parks together and creating additional opportunities on the lake. Whereas someone could be at Winkler Park and enjoy the ball game, a crawdad ball game, and then leave from there along a greenway, along a trail. And you talked about the pedestrian bridge. That's one of the things about the pedestrian bridge across 321, helping to make that connection. And they could go to down to Geithner Rotary Park with activities there, and connect into Hickory City Park, J.C. Park. There are opportunities for new trails, improved public spaces there, event spaces, potentially from an economic development standpoint, opportunity potentially down the road that you could go to a ball game, that you could potentially go down on the lake, be a restaurant, cafe down on the lake for that. So it's just a destination point. Right now we're just calling it's just called a waterfront park, but it's a destination point. But trying to take advantage of that asset in Lake Hickory that we've not really taken advantage of. Next one is the Hickory, what's called Hickory. This is Hickory Lenore, but it's actually the Main Avenue Linear Park. Just to try and orient you, if you look down at the bottom, you can see along Main Avenue the railroad track. What it basically taking is that public space and improving it, and taking that public space and turning it into basically a linear park. You can see, if you look up in the top left, you can see basically where the road is, basically a greenway. Brian talked about the rail to trail and with the active line. The thought is, even with this track out here, an active line, there still could be greenway access that runs adjacent to that, so it's a dual purpose. The linear park, you can see water features, potential water features, picnic areas, places for kiosks there. The thought behind it in Inspiring Spaces is that we talked about the waterfront park. We're going back to Brian's comment about the Hickory Heritage Trail would connect the waterfront park down by the Hickory Trail down into this Main Avenue linear park. So the vision is that you could be at the waterfront park and recreating there, and come along down the Hickory Heritage Trail, connect into downtown into this by greenway. So that's the unique thing about this, is taking existing space down here and just creating that park-like atmosphere. The next proposed project along that same line is the Ivy Arboretum in Carolina Park. And as you can see, everything I've talked about so far is just taking existing public spaces, existing park, and making improvements and upgrades to that. Here at Carolina Park Ivy Arboretum, you can see down at the bottom is existing on each one of these, and then above that are proposed, and these are just some proposed activities that could go there. You've heard some talk, and I said about the Hickory Art Walk. There's potential for improving the Hickory Art Walk, creating some additional public seating spaces, event spacing here, also some new planting areas. And what this will do, and we go back to that connecting. We want to connect, and then this park would also connect into the Main Avenue Linear Park, which connects into the waterfront park. So that connection thing, you'll see all the way through the plan. The last park is Henry Fork River Regional Park. This park was developed, just trying to orient you. Henry Fork is off of exit 121 off of I-40. It's a 45-acre park. We opened this park in 2001. It was developed basically in three phases. Two of those phases have been developed. The third phase of that in the original plan, as you can see, one of the recommendations is putting an amphitheater out at Henry Fork of Art. That's actually what's actually phase 3 in the original plan. As you can see, that's also proposed in this plan in the inspiring spaces. But also one of the things that's been identified here, and a lot of things you'll see in the inspiring spaces in the parks and in the greenways is the collaboration and partnerships. In the city, we've entered into a partnership with the Catawba Valley Youth Soccer Association to light additional soccer fields out at Henry Fork. And what's that will allow them, the soccer associations will allow them to grow their program, allows us to grow our program. It also expands the use of that park, allows for extended use of that park. One of the other features of the plan, and a lot of what I'm going back to what Brian's already talked about with the greenways, but also the development of the Henry Fork River Greenway, which starts here and connects. That greenway actually connects out to Baker's Mountain Park, down into Mountain View, and down, also back down into downtown Hickory. So hopefully what you've heard me talk about from the park standpoint is taking existing public spaces, improving them, but also connecting, and that's one of the things we looked at, has been looked at in Inspiring Spaces project is that connectivity there. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it, I think, back over to Brian. Talk about some special places. All yours, sir.
Thanks, man. And Hickory already has a lot of special places. We're just looking at enhancing some of those special places and creating some new ones. Some of the proposed projects, and a bunch of them are in downtown, and we're looking at improving upon the Hickory Art Walk already. I mean, it currently, it used to go between Union Square and the Salt Block. In the past year, I serve as liaison of the Public Art Commission, and they've extended it over to Macomb Park and to Lenore Ryan University, and there's talk of going over to Stanford Park with it. We've already been putting in some additional sculptures. There's a couple more on the way, and the Public Art Commission looks at putting in more, plus with the 49 benches that we have already, there will be another 10 in place by the end of this fall. So we're looking at doing a redesign there, improvements on Union Square, Trade Alley with the streetscape and maybe some additional murals, taking a look at Harper House and fitting that in better with surrounding arts and craft houses and anywhere from the Claremont to the downtown to the Oakwood neighborhood areas. And we'll show a couple pictures, but streetscape and pedestrian improvements, including the 3rd Street West Rail Tunnel. That's in pretty rough shape. You wouldn't want to walk across it. I think it has a colony of pigeons. I'm not sure they're endangered or not. But the Public Art Commission was actually talking about seeing if we could get the city or Norfolk Southern to have some kind of partnership to go in there to fix up the tunnel and maybe do a mural or have that lighted with some like neon graphics or something under there as part of the art walk and make it that a pretty neat design feature. Talking about the Main Avenue North Linear Park. Robinson Park, I think, is underutilized. You know, I've been upset. I've been here almost 8 years and never been inside the cabin. I don't think we're going to move it. I know we're not going to move it, but it would be nice to look inside and just talk about that heritage of Hickory a little bit more. And then I talked before about the historic Ridgeview Library off of South Center Street that's still being planned out. There'll be all interconnectivity. We really need to see a more uniform design and the characteristics of the public space. I think it looks pretty good overall, but it's somewhat ad hoc and should have more of a theme to it. The Salt Block, again, continue to beautify the streetscape there, continue with public art displays, reading and learning gardens, I talked a few minutes ago before Mac's presentation about the Piedmont wagon site. That definitely needs to be redeveloped. I understand maybe there's somebody on the hook for it, and I'm hoping. Mac was gracious enough a couple weeks ago to give me a tour of the old polio hospital at J.C. Park, and right now we've got a lease agreement with the Hickory Music Factory, so that right now is being, again, utilized in part. LR, talk about public healing gardens and more of a gateway definition. There's some nasty-looking billboards at the intersection now where LR Boulevard Extension meets the university proper. It's opened up, Holler Hosiery. Moretz will soon be redeveloped. We hope it's a positive domino effect in that area with Holler and the Granary and up Highland Avenue. So we'd like to see some improvements there as well. Hickory Magnet School, Mac talked a little bit before about LP France Stadium. The city is actively working with Hickory Baseball to realize some improvements, and that stadium has been open since '93. Since '93. Talking to CVCC about outdoor classroom, possibly an amphitheater. That's something that comes up every time the city of Hickory does a study or asks for public comment. People in a survey, people always want to see some kind of amphitheater in the city of Hickory. I think that's a great idea. Again, maybe we'll take a look at expanding the art walk into the Stanford Park Greenway. Hope that would fly, and we'll get to splash pads in a couple minutes. This is special places in downtown. I think we need somewhat of a redesign and reorganization of the downtown. I've definitely seen the improvements in the short time that I've been here, but we really want to improve connectivity. As a planner, I think we have too much bricks and mortar and not enough green. You take a look at some of the aerials, even the newer ones. It'd be really nice to see a lot of green, so it really is a true urban park and not just an urban space. There's a real difference, I think, between a space and a place, at least in my idealistic planning world. But I think there's a lot of opportunities, like I said, with the tunnel, planting large, mature trees, and just an enhanced streetscape leading into downtown, including at the railway station. It's now open as another restaurant. So we're really, and then with the sales on the square, of course, is definitely visibly, aesthetically enhanced. Union Square brought thousands of people to downtown on a regular basis where they may not have been before. So, we've done a lot of things, some of it well planned, some ad hoc, but it's all part of the larger picture, which Inspiring Spaces is looking to bring us into. Take that next step, take us up to that next level. Next thing I mentioned briefly before was the splash pads. This is really, really popular. I had a chance in the past year or so to be in Atlanta twice. I'm not comparing Hickory to Atlanta, of course, but the splash pads there in Centennial Park were just awesome, absolutely utilized. The kids, the adults were just having an absolute blast. And, we're looking at possibly taking the splash pads, having interactive water features in our key parks. Water always attracts folks. I'm from Syracuse, New York. Even if it's frozen, it attracts folks. But we're looking at two of them in the former swimming pool sites that were closed a few years back. J.C. Park and the proposed Sandy Pines Park would be great assets to those areas with active water features, including splash pads. Another thing we're looking at is uniform design characteristics. I mentioned before in Union Square, but looking at all public spaces with consistent landscaping improvements, stone, just taking a real look at guiding physical improvements for Hickory's gateways and entrances and outdoor spaces, of which we have a lot of. We're going to see some improvements in coming days, as now and into next Tuesday at Macomb Park, where there's going to be a meditation garden and a new sculpture called Flyaway. It shows it's a bronze sculpture with a young girl chasing a bird. It's really beautiful, and that's another public-private partnership effort. Those seem to work very well in Hickory. LRU, Lenore Rhine, again, encourage development of further student housing. I mean, LR's done a good job in buying up some properties. Some were derelict, some weren't, but they're really bringing them up to state building and fire codes. and getting some more students off campus and interacting more with the surrounding community, so they're not really an island at LR. So they've got some great sculptures, so the Public Art Commission's happy that we've connected with LR with their sculptures. They've got some fantastic public art, landscaping, some specimen trees over there, and we like to tie them into the downtown area much more than they are so now. Again, the suggested project of a sculpture walk extending the art walk to Stanford Park, Greenwood, I think this would be great. We've been talking to some folks about bringing additional artists in, and if Lenore can have almost 90 sculptures, I'm not sure why Hickory can't. The benches are great, but we can't live by benches alone. So we want to see some more public art and sculpture. That was a planning joke. It's like Danny's all wet comment the other night. Anyway, I'm sorry. But for the next thing that we've got, which ties in, is the salt block. I mean, it's a wonderful asset to the city for a city our size. Having that, I think, is just phenomenal. They've got a lot of public art. They've got a lot of specimen trees. And again, just take a look at the landscape there and enhancing that experience through public, pedestrian, and bicycle connections that would go from the salt block both to LR, to Union Square, and to Fry Regional Medical Center. You can see a lot of people walking that area. Chuck's folks have done a lot in the past couple of years to improve the safety of the crosswalks at some of the major intersections in the Claremont Historic District. So there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of special places that we have now. Anything can be improved upon and enhanced and create new opportunities, and we think this would be a good jump start. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Hans.
Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. Streetscapes is my topic, but I'm going to go backwards just a little bit before we go forwards. We basically have four kinds of roads here in town. We have federal roads, I-40, US 70, US 321. We have NCDOT roadways, 127 Springs Road, one-way pairs north and south, LR Boulevard, Fairgrove Church Road. Most of what you think probably are major roadways other than 40 and 321 and 70. Those are all NCDOT roadways. Then you have the city streets, which you think of more really your urban residential roadways. And then the fourth one is a private road that essentially nobody takes care of usually. Hopefully we don't have near as many of those as we used to 20 years ago. But if you really talk about the first two, the Fed roads and the DOT roadways, the thing that is changing a little bit nationwide and more specifically North Carolina-wide is the rules of what we can do within those right-of-ways. They're opening up a little bit to allow some additional signage, some additional character to those public spaces, meaning the road right-of-way. It's not just for vehicle travel anymore. You're seeing more sidewalks built. You're seeing more bike lanes. So that's an evolution. It's been talked about for the last 10, 12, 15 years, but it's really now just getting into some construction of these facilities in various places. So when you go to some towns, North Carolina, you might see a bikeway along it. So you got to ask yourself, is that a state street or actually a city street that got built? The challenge for us, and Hickory has a lot of gateways if you think about how you get into town. 40, 321, 70, 127, Fairgrove, McDonald Parkway, LR Boulevard, the one-way pairs north and south, Springs Road, Tate Boulevard, Sandy Ridge Road. Those are all roads into our urban downtown area in some form or fashion. So which one is our real gateway? We've got a ton of them. That's a little bit of a challenge to us. We don't have one way or two ways in and out of town. So where we're at really in the evolution of things is how do we take some of those and start creating that gateway that Andrea talked about, and part of that is the streetscape topic. And in my slang term, we're getting ready to make some omelets, and we're going to break some eggs doing it. We're going to be in people's front yards. We're going to lose some asphalt. We're going to take some trees out. In order to do all those things to improve that, you're going to have to break something. And that's the evolution of what we're going to have to live through if we're going to do some of what you're getting ready to see on this next couple of pages. The end product is probably going to be a much better end product, but we've got to live through the pain to get there. In the past, you bought this much right-of-way for this much road. Today, you buy this much right-of-way for this much road, with this much sidewalk and bikeway. We're on the other end of that cycle just a little bit. We have all this, now we've got to go backwards and put this stuff in, which means we either got to go wider, or this thing's got to narrow up and we've got to steal some of that asphalt to create the other things. So the answer is probably going to be some of both. Some places you're going to have to widen some things out to create that space. Some case you may actually narrow that asphalt down, meaning the travel lane, where you may have 4 lanes of cars today, you go to 3 lanes of cars with a center turn lane, 1 lane each direction, and you create some bike lanes for what you stole from the vehicles. That's sort of what you're going to see in these next series of slides. And the reason I want to talk about that before I showed you any pictures, you're going to lose that when I start talking about them. These are sketches. These are the planner's world. These are not the engineer's world. So these are not something to take out there and say, here's what it's going to look like as an end product. You got to design that end product yet. That was our joke, bro. The reality of it is you really have to design these. So what this one little snapshot of a sketch looks like may be a particular segment of that roadway, not the whole roadway. So you have to sort of take these next slides with a little bit of grain of salt. But the project, the planning document that we're talking about here, this first slide essentially takes these things and puts them in various types of roads, A through H, if you really look on the left-hand side of that sheet, and sort of gives a little list of which ones fall into that particular type of street. The first one, type A, and I won't spend a whole lot of time going through each one of these, but that's, for example, the one-way pairs north and south of downtown here. 2 lanes each direction. If we convert those back to 2-way traffic, you're probably not going to widen that road any. You don't need to do that. The travel lanes are there. You might be able to even narrow them down. But the question is, do you lose some parking on them to create some bike lanes, or do you have a share the road scenario where that bike is sharing that same travel lane with the vehicle? In that case, you're going to add, obviously, signals going the other direction for all of those intersections that cross. Your real design challenge in those is what happens at the end points. What happens at the one-way pair south side at Tate Boulevard and LR Boulevard where you have the one-ways, 1st and 2nd Avenue. That whole intersection is going to get reworked to function, to convert those back to 2-way roadways. So those are design challenges that you really get into the devil in the details on when you're saying, okay, let's convert from 1-way to 2-way. That's the stuff that's still got to come after. You know, if that project floats to the top and we say, okay, let's change one of these one-way pairs or both of these one-way pairs, you've got to take that and then actually design it so that it can work. Signal timing plans, all of those things roll into play. So that's one basic schematic of 1-way to 2-way. The type B street, you heard Brian talk about this in Mac 2. This is actually Main Avenue. This schematic sort of relates to Main Avenue right here behind us. From the college really all the way to about 9th Street over by the Piedmont Wagon Building. At least to downtown. We have some, public land next to the railroad tracks. So do we eliminate that parking, which you just can't make it go away? Where does that parking get replaced? What happens to that? Because it's needed for the functions along this roadway, City Hall, Court Building, all of those kind of things. But you turn that into some linear parkway that has some pedestrian access, some walking access, connectivity from the college area, even to downtown and beyond, or from west back to downtown. So that's sort of what this particular streetscape is changing, if you will, from Main Avenue and nothing but paved parking lot to something that, like Brian says, does have some greenery. back in the downtown area. Next page, type C. That's the one you were just looking at. You can see the train sort of up on the hill there. Not that there's that much relief out there, but actually gives some break and some pedestrian capabilities there. Type C. This is an example of what Old Lenore Road might could turn into. Those of you who know where that is, you're coming into town on 2 lanes each direction. It's a 4-lane, no median, no sidewalks. The right-of-way is this far behind the curb and gutter that's out there. People do use it, walking in it, along it. Some of that's employment traffic. And very little of that is recreational pedestrian traffic. But what if you steal one of those lanes, put it in the middle as a turn lane, and you steal the other lane and you create some bike lanes and sidewalk space out of it? The trade-off is you definitely have a much better looking roadway, theoretically a little bit slower roadway. You may have just a little bit more congestion at times because you've lost capacity in your travel lanes. But you still allow turning movements. People can still get into the businesses or hopefully what grows out there in terms of business. But that's an example of stealing some of the existing infrastructure space to create a little different use of it. Type D. This one is the challenge, probably all of ours, in my personal opinion. This is an example of what do you do with a 127? It's a 5-lane, lots of turning movements, a driveway every 150 feet. Those businesses rely on their driveways. We would all like it to look a lot better. A lot of that's parking lot right out to the edge of the sidewalk, and the sidewalk's right up behind the curb because when it was built, there was no sidewalk. The only place left built to build a sidewalk was that strip of right-of-way that wide before private property. So do you eliminate some of those turning movements where logically they can be eliminated, or most practically they can be eliminated, to create some visual landscaping down through there versus a strip of wide asphalt? Same thing could be a Catawba Valley Boulevard. If you go back to how some of these things were built, those property owners that donated right-of-way in Catawba Valley Boulevard didn't want medians. They said, well, we want to be able to have a driveway where we want a driveway in the future. So we'll give you the land to put the road on, but don't cut me off. So some of that gets back to working backwards again to try to create some of this stuff to improve the aesthetics and the walkability or bikeability of some of these. Ultimate goal is streetscape, gateways, changing the appearance and the feel of that area. Various sections of 127. If you think you've all made the whole run up and down 127, there's different sections that feel different, and it can probably function a little different based on this schematic. It doesn't work in every exact place, but it can work in some. Springs Road, very same type of feel and use there. Very commercial, very driveway oriented, access oriented. So how do you still keep people getting in and out of the businesses, but in the meantime not take up half of somebody's front parking lot to create that sidewalk and parking space either, or landscaping space? How far do you go in on that private property to make that happen? Or what do you do in the existing width to narrow something down to create that? Homework problem is how do you do it after the fact? Type E. How's the type D? Again, there's a median showing here. Which one of these is the red button? The red button. If you really look at this, you notice this median doesn't extend the whole length of this schematic. So these could be, in various places along that roadway to break up that visual, but still create some turning movements. Type F, 4-lane divided boulevard. That's an example, 321, potentially. DOT is doing some designing on 321 through Hickory from 40 to the bridges. More specifically, 13th at the Nita Furniture area out to the bridges and the bridge replacement. Some of that is a 6-lane urban super street type design. But in this case, on this type F schematic, Tate Boulevard is probably a good example of that. It has a pretty wide grass median, some landscaping in it, but there's a pretty decent shoulder right-of-way section that probably may even get a pedestrian path off beside it. So you could really get from Fairgrove Church Road all the way back to LR Boulevard, off-road if you really wanted to. Change the look and feel of that whole travel as a gateway in to town too. Type G, very similar to the last one, a little bit larger. An example of that one might be McDonald Parkway. Under one design way back in the early stages, McDonald Parkway was supposed to be a 5-lane road like NC 127. So we were working with the DOT 15 years ago. We were able to get it to what you see out there today, something with a median in it, some grass around it. Couldn't quite get sidewalks up and down the whole length of it at that particular time due to their standards and what they would pay for. But we were able to at least keep it from just a 5-foot ribbon of asphalt. So now how do you take it to the next level? Do you spend probably not a lot of pedestrian traffic from a user because there's very limited access to that section of it. But it's probably a good bike ride up and down that if you had a place to do that off to the side too. So again, something when that was built with DOT, they were going to spend essentially no dollars on landscaping. That's money after the fact that the local entities have to put in if they really want it. Type H, again, sort of this is they've listed NC or US 70 down. Some sections that's 4 lanes, 5 lanes, 6 lanes, or even 7 lanes out on Highway 70. With the construction that's taken place over the last 20 years, 70 is not the problem child that it used to be. So some of that, obviously the lanes work on, Friday night on Christmas, that's a different story. You don't design for that. That's going to be what it is. But with the addition of McDonald Parkway, some other interchanges being added, Catawba Valley Boulevard, the widening of Robinson Road, the improvements on Startown, all of that's helped the connectivity out there and has allowed maybe some of the lanes on 70 to be utilized for something different. So the question is, can you reduce or steal some of that travel lane for some landscape in some way, shape, or form? Again, DOT's got to be a piece of that puzzle. That's just not us saying, yeah, let's go do it. We're going to have approval and review process, some steps that have to go through there. So those are some of the challenges with the road issue and the streetscape. But when you start rolling these things together, connectivity to the parks, connectivity with bikeways, pedestrian ways, wayfinding, which is sort of a part of this streetscape ways into town and around town. All of those things begin overlapping on one another real quick. And so by doing one of these projects, you sort of ripple into another one real easy and start combining some of these things as complete projects, if you will. Henry?
So I know folks we're over time just a tad, and we'll want to make sure you get out as soon as you can. The things that we wanted to say in conclusion are that, and Chuck summarized it well, that this is a very integrated system, and so the projects are going to be all over town, but we have to start somewhere. So what the steering committee, the advisory committee is doing right now is beginning to think about how to categorize these projects, into, just like you would for your home. What's the easy, short, quick, maybe less expensive projects? What are some of the ones that maybe take a longer time, have more complex issues, and maybe cost a medium amount? And then which ones are fairly expensive and fairly complex? And then trying to decide, which projects get done in which order. So that's going on. That discussion is happening. And then there's the discussion of funding. And so that's also going on as well. And so the next times that we will meet, we'll have more of that information ready for you. And so we wanted just to make sure it was hard at the open house to get a sense of all the detail here, and it's hard when you just go on the website to see that detail just by staring at the links to the plan. We wanted to actually go through it with you in detail. So I hope it's been helpful, and please, we've had a few extra copies. Take them with you. But we will be back in connection with you because we want to get you updated on a number of other parts of this project. So this is the Inspiring Spaces portion of Innovate Catawba. But at the same time, Innovate Catawba includes a broader category of inspiring things and places, and that still needs to get fleshed out.
Communities.
Thank you. I lost my word. Thank you. Inspiring communities. So we'll get back together with you in addition about that. So that's all I had. Feel free to take a few and sign in. If you didn't sign in, that'd be great if you could do that. And does anybody have questions? Or Steve?
Is
Yes.
the steering committee here today? Were they invited today?
No, it was just for this group, steering
What
committee.
group is this?
This is the Innovate Catawba Inspiring Communities email distribution list, as well as the Southside Pastors group was another group that was
I have
involved.
one more question. When we had the meetings about swimming pools, a lady over in Southwest Hickory did an extensive study of splash pads and said that they were hygienically unsafe. And yet here there's always splash pads. Has anybody studied that? Are splash pads safe?
Yes.
She convinced me that the splash pads were not safe.
Wow.
They are safe.
Max says they're safe, and all the
She's done a research
information.
and said made a pretty convincing speech.
Okay. I think we're hearing otherwise, and a lot of communities are putting them in. Even the Conover YMCA is putting one in at the Y over in Conover. So I think there's probably multiple opinions about that. Okay.
I listened to like Chuck said, we're going to have to break some eggs to make some things happen, and I
Okay.
agree to that to a
Uh-huh.
great extent. But I have some reservations about this whole concept out there at the 321 Lakeside,
Okay.
because I do not want to see that track screwed up. And a lot of people that are, because I've seen the Carolina Trailways type of thought process, and it's like
Like the thread
we're
trail?
going to screw up that track and turn it into a trail. And I don't have a problem with that as long as the trail coincides and is integrated into the track. Yeah, but I don't think that you screw that up, because we're going to see gas prices in the next 10 years that could be $10 a gallon. That right now we see in this state that we have a great reduction in travel utilizing petroleum products. Okay, and that, as this community goes forward, and we've seen the reduction in population, and we have to take that into account. I agree. All this connectivity is very important.
So you're saying not.
Don't screw up that railroad
don't
track.
Take out the track to do the trail.
There's
Sometimes
they've already. If you go and you Google map it, they've already built houses like right up next
well,
to
that's
the,
true. You
and it's
can
just
see
stupid.
that. Yeah.
There's no foresight.
That's a very good point.
Well,
One of the-
that company is not Norfolk and Southern, Southwest.
Yeah, that was a mistake. It's
That's a
Southwest.
major business in our region. It's an
Yeah, it
important
is.
business to our region.
You're right.
And they're doing ties and doing rail improvement every day on that railroad.
Yeah, they are, and we're in discussion with that railroad owner. We understand that one is in the probably very expensive, very complex.
Well, we talk about economic development, and we're talking about billions of dollars of economic development that are possible if we get this community turned around.
You're right.
That run up against that railroad track. The only reason why that there's only 2 days of travel is because all those people have been laid off from those businesses up there. As soon as if we brought business back to the United States, then we need that rail to be able to cart goods and services up and down that track. So we need to think about it.
Yeah, That's good. I appreciate that. I think
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
you're right on target. We wish we had a railroad that was totally abandoned and nobody cared about, that we could turn into something like a greenway, but maybe that's not the case here. So that's a good point.
Was the topography out there
And
also?
then there's that. We are blessed with that topography.
Yes.
It's going to be expensive. You make a good point when we talk about building greenways and all. So, all righty. Anybody else? I wanted to recognize Danny Seaver. He spent his whole end of the afternoon. Thank you for coming. And Brad Lale was here too. So we want to thank council members for coming out. So, all righty. I'll be in touch. I'll send you a couple more invitations.